Today I'm excited to talk about this new creature collector RPG that's available on the Switch, Xbox, Steam, basically everywhere but PlayStation right now. Cassette Beasts. So since this launched on Steam, I've wanted to give it a try, and I'm thankful to finally have my hands on it. Shout out to the publisher for the review code. Alright, let's jump in. When it originally released, I think just on Steam at first, people were freaking out about this game. Like, everybody was talking about it. It was an absolute indie darling. And for good reason. Cassette Beasts has this really cool art style that harkens back to some of the classics. It's a big hit of nostalgia for those of us who grew up with those early generations of Pokemon. The game wastes no time getting you into the action. Within a few minutes, you're battling and collecting tapes. There's a pretty big overworld, and as you collect new tapes, you get new abilities to traverse the overworld. It's a pretty cool mechanic. It reminds me a little of the HMs from Pokemon, but they're not nearly as annoying, and they don't actually take an action move from one of your creatures. Here's an example. Pretty early on, you capture this moth-like tape, and once you've captured it or copied it or whatever the language is, you get the ability to glide around in the overworld. Like, you spring wings and you can fly over gaps and stuff. But moving around the overworld, gliding with those wings or just running is governed by this little stamina wheel. It's a little green stamina wheel. Looks just like the one from Breath of the Wild. As you progress, your stamina wheel gets a little bigger, so you can run a little further or you can glide a little further. It's just like Breath of the Wild. I think one of the standouts you have here is the character customization options. So from your hairstyle to your clothes, you can really build your character to look pretty much the way you want them to. I mean, the options aren't endless, but there's a lot of variety. As you might expect, gameplay is very reminiscent of an older Pokemon game. A top-down perspective, turn-based battles, evolution, it's all here. Unlike the earlier Pokemon games, Cassette Beasts does away with random encounters. All the creatures that you can fight or avoid are right there on the overworld. But the twist is, you're not actually capturing and keeping these creatures around. Instead of throwing them out to battle, you actually become the creature. You transform into this tape that you've captured. You basically just get a copy of its genetics, I guess, and then it becomes part of you, and then you become this creature. And since you become these creatures, the leveling system is a little different too. You're not leveling up individual creatures. Instead, you're leveling yourself up and your people in your party. But it isn't the creatures themselves, it's you, the character. So that means when you capture a new tape and you want to use it in battle, you can use it at your current level. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time grinding it up or trying to teach it new moves. It is as strong as you are at the time that you capture it. It's an interesting twist. It's kind of reminiscent of XP share, but it's even faster, so it eliminates some of that grind time. The battles, again, are turn-based. They have this rock, paper, scissors system. Each monster has its strengths and its weaknesses, but Cassette Beasts really takes it a step further. These strengths and weaknesses against each other are really unique to this game. For example, I was kind of surprised to see that a wind-type move is effective against a grass type because it uproots them. Right? So the particular rock, paper, scissors in Cassette Beasts just takes a little getting used to. There's so many different attack types and tape types, it's a little hard to keep up with, honestly. For me, at least. The battle system uses an AP system that adds a little bit more strategy to the fight. It reminds me a little of the battle system from Octopath Traveler, so your basic attacks help you build up AP, and then your special attacks deplete it. The other cool thing about Cassette Beasts' battle system is that you're almost always battling with a partner. So it's always a 2-on-1 or a 2-on-2 matchup. Once you've built up the relationship with your partner, you can actually fuse your monsters together and create this super monster temporarily, and it gives you some really powerful attacks that let you end battles pretty quickly. Now overall, I like this battle system a lot, but it can get a little slow, especially when you're 3 or 4 levels over the opponent you're fighting, and it's still taking 3, 4, 5 hits to kill him. It just takes a long time to get through some of these, even the easy battles. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised about this, with a game called Cassette Beasts, but the music is really top tier. Despite the old school looks, Cassette Beasts delivers a soundtrack that's way more than chiptunes. These songs are catchy, and they really just add to the overall experience of the game. I'll play a little bit here.
It's fine to be floating
So next up, let's talk about the monsters a little bit. One of the things that I've found in some of the later Pokemon games is there were just so many monsters, and after I had been out of Pokemon for a while, it was pretty hard to catch up and just figure out what all these monsters are and what all they do. Cassette Beasts does a pretty good job of limiting the number of monsters, especially in the first few areas, so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, like you see a lot of the same monsters over and over. And I think some people could see that as a negative, you know, there's not enough diversity here. But for me, it was like just enough that I didn't feel overwhelmed with all of these different creatures. And I was really focused on like capturing all of them, all the different ones that I could find in that particular area before moving on. I think Cassette Beast strikes a really nice balance of, you know, having a diverse creature set without it feeling overwhelming or without some of the monster designs just feeling a little half-baked. So as you're raising your monsters, maybe you want to change one of their attacks, for example. So you do that by placing stickers on the outside of the cassette itself. And what's really cool is you can take one sticker from one monster and put it on another monster's cassette and then transfer the attack from one monster to the other just instantly. You can't use the same attack on multiple monsters at the same time, but you can, you know, take it off monster A and put it on monster B, and suddenly monster B has that new attack. Okay, so far I've pretty much praised Cassette Beasts as this really fun, Pokemon-inspired, you know, retro RPG creature collector, and it's true. You know, it's a good, solid game in that creature collector RPG genre, but it's not without its flaws. The biggest flaw I saw when I was playing through the game are the frame rate drops. I played the game right at launch and it was in pretty rough shape. Nothing game breaking, but it's absolutely distracting. The frame rate drops and the glitchiness of the game was so bad when I first started. I was like moving around in the water and the game was just glitching out. It was so bad, I thought it had to be on purpose. I was like, okay, this game has this, you know, retro aesthetic. Maybe there's just like introduce some aesthetic glitchiness to just make the overall feel more complete. But I don't think it's intentional at all. I think this game is just struggling to perform. And I'm not sure why. I mean, just look at this game. It's a top-down, turn-based, pixel art RPG on the Switch. I don't think it should be that taxing. That said, I haven't played this game on Steam or on the Xbox, so if any of you have, let me know. Did you notice any performance glitches when you were playing it? Another small thing, when you're entering and exiting some of the dungeons, the loading times are pretty long, so you're just sitting there thinking about, you know, the other creature collector RPGs you could be playing while you're waiting on this to load. And while the story is a little interesting, I didn't find it compelling enough to keep driving me through the game. Like, it was really the collecting and exploration. It wasn't the story. You know, they spent a little bit of time at the beginning doing some world building and introducing new characters, and it just never clicked for me. And that's totally okay. I liked other pieces of the game, but the story just never clicked. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is the platforming. Occasionally in the overworld, you're, you know, jumping from one platform to another, or you're gliding over gaps. And with just this top-down perspective, the inability to move the camera, there are just some really awkward platforming pieces that are much harder than they should be. It's a small complaint, but I noticed it. But overall, you know, the gameplay, the mechanics, the look, the feel, the soundtrack, I think Cassette Beasts is really worth a shot if you like these kinds of games. If you're a fan of those early generation Pokemon games, I think you're really gonna enjoy this. So I want to hear from you guys. Are you picking up Cassette Beasts? Have you already played it? If so, what do you think? It is also available, I think, on Game Pass. So if you have an Xbox, you have Game Pass, download it, won't cost you anything. All right, that's it for today. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.